In this particular lesson, we're going to be looking over linear relations. Now, when we begin the lesson, let's start off with what is a function. Now, when we're trying to define a function can be described by the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Now, you guys might be thinking, well, what is the independent variable and what is the dependent variable? Well, the independent variable is when a value occurs without anything else needed, but the dependent variable, it needs something else to happen first before it can happen. So when we are looking at real life scenarios, we could compare it to the time of the year and the number of apple produce. So in terms of the time of the year, it doesn't really depend on anything. Time just passes. But the amount of apple produce, well, that depends on what time of the year it is. Depending on the time of the year, we will have more produce or no produce. So over here, we have the independent variable, which can also be called our domain. And we have the dependent variable over here, which can also be referred to as the range. Now, when we are trying to graph this particular relationship, our domain will always be on the horizontal axis, and our range will always be on the vertical axis. So in other words, our domain are the x values, but this will change depending on the relationship we are looking at. Our domain can also be the t values, which represent time. It could be the d value, which represents distance. It pretty much could be anything depending on the scenario. And our range is usually our y values. Now, with this particular relationship that we have, there is a restriction. The restriction is that for every domain, there can only be one range. And that pretty much makes sense in real life because let's say you turn exactly 16 years old. Not a second more, not a second less. Now, when you're that particular age, you cannot be two different heights at the same time. You cannot be 5'6" and 6'2" at the exact same time. And that's pretty much what it goes over.